everyone. Welcome to the Mom Wanna Read show. I am so excited for today's episode because we have an amazing guest, Lauren Castronovo. Lauren is a board-certified nurse practitioner from sunny San Diego who focuses on women's wellness in her private practice. Growing up as an Army brat, she moved 12 times before heading to college, completing her studies at Texas Christian University, DePaul University in Chicago, and University of South Alabama. Welcome to the show, Lauren.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so happy you're here. So let's talk about women's health. I see it everywhere. And in different stages also I see it. I have daughters in their 20s and 30s, and there's lots talking about with that. And then also perimenopause and all the stuff's all in between. What led you to specialize in women's health?
Gosh, I'm board certified to see all ages, and I actually do when I work in the hospital setting. But what I was seeing after years and years of treating all kinds of different patients, that women don't really have a lot of options for outpatient care. And certainly when it comes to certain specialties, it's really challenging to find a provider that either has the time or capacity to really sit down and hear a woman's concerns. And oftentimes, and I've heard this over and over again, a woman will say, like, I have all these things going on and I have a 10-minute appointment that I get rushed through, and I feel like I can't even ask questions. And then I leave the appointment with even more questions. And it's just sort of this really frustrating cycle. And, I can certainly relate to that experience as well. And I wanted to create an environment that was more casual than clinical and didn't feel stuffy or scary, and where a woman could really come and show up and feel heard and feel that a plan was being made with her instead of for her or to her. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it developed.
It's so true. I know for me, I had the same OB that I've had since I was 19. So I just go for my checkups and stuff like that. And then now that I'm 50, I went in because I was having all these issues. So heart palpitations, night sweats, brain fog, like just all the perimenopausal things. But then they were just like, well, it's going to be about 10 years. Yep, you're going through menopause. And I was just like, I just like need what can I do? Like, I need some help.
Yeah,
But
and don't get me wrong, there are amazing OB providers and gynecologists that, do incredible work. They deliver babies. They
yes, yeah.
help with oral contraception and they help with women's sexual health and all those things. But there's this phase or season of life that kind of gets put to the wayside, and women are just told, like, well, suck it up. This is the change. Everybody goes through it.
Mhm.
But I really felt empowered to, like, let's help women feel good during this season. We have things that we can do and ways to address those things in the same way that we focus on the other stages of life. And so,
Okay, so what about women in their 30s to 40s? What are some significant reproductive health changes a woman experiences between the ages of 30 and 40, and how can we navigate these changes? Because that's when I felt like for me, I think it was about 34, 35-ish. Like things just started changing, but no one was even like my doctor wasn't talking to me about it, or even my mom or the older women in my family. Like nobody even talked about this stuff. And I feel like now it's great because now we have the internet and everyone's
yeah,
talking about these things, you know?
which is good and bad.
Yeah,
It's certainly
yeah.
highlighting this time in a woman's life, but also there can be some, misinformation going out on the internet. But so that's why it's so important to be able to find a provider that is informed in like perimenopause and menopause and has the training to help somebody through that time.
Mhm.
Um, but so yeah, it's a hot topic, right? Everybody's talking about hormone replacement. Everybody's talking about symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. But the weird thing is as women, we're not really taught about our bodies, really taught
Exactly.
about the intricacies of our cycle, and what happens after childbirth and all of that. And so, just to, in simplistic terms, break it down, menopause in the United States generally starts around the age of, well, can be between the age range of 45 to 55. The average woman gets diagnosed at being in the state of menopause at around 51. And the way that is clinically diagnosed is 12 months without a period. So if somebody is approaching that time where things are kind of irregular, or sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's light, you're still in the perimenopause phase. And so perimenopause is 7 to 10 years prior. So that's a really long time of this like weird time frame of
Oh
all
yeah.
these clusters of symptoms going on. And that's when it gets frustrating, because women are saying, I know something's not right, but
Yes.
you're
Yeah.
just told, well, deal with it. This is the change.
Yeah.
Um, so to answer your question though, more succinctly, in that mid 30s to late 30s range, we start to approach those menopause symptoms. So at this point, estrogen and progesterone are dropping.
Hmm.
And this is what causes all these uncomfortable symptoms that happen. And so that can look like women start noticing that their normal diet and exercise isn't preventing them from this weird weight gain that they're starting to get in their hips and their abdomen. They're feeling bloated. They're noticing dry skin. Maybe there's some hair changes. Suddenly they are feeling anxious and they have mood changes and irritability. You hear women say like, man, I used to be able to sleep and now I wake up at 3 o'clock and I can't go back to sleep. And this is happening all the time. They feel fatigued. There's sometimes some like urinary incontinence symptoms going on. And then there's the brain fog.
Oh,
And
brain fog. Like everything just goes bye bye out the door. I'm middle of the conversation. I'm like, wait, what was I talking about
yep,
again?
I came into this room and man, I can't remember why I came in here, or what was I going to do? And memory changes and just feeling really unfocused and not as productive as they used to. So that's kind of like the general cluster that you start to see. And the reason women first present to me is because they're anxious, there's some mood changes and irritability, and they're thinking, I must be depressed.
Mhm.
But we then really dive into what is the root cause of some of these experiences. We check thyroid, we check iron levels, we check for micronutrient deficiencies, um, and we look at hormones, because even in your late 30s, you're relatively young, but
Mhm.
that's when we start to see these changes happening.
Mhm. Give me like a couple, like five basic things that a woman can do when she's going through these change. Like once she starts seeing these changes, maybe she's like 35, 40.
Yep.
What are a couple of basic things that she could do just for herself to help with these changes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So conventionally, we don't really initiate in the medical community. There's not always any like preventative, or treatment doesn't really start until somebody really experiences and starts complaining about these symptoms. But if you know you're approaching this or you're starting to experience these things, a
Mhm.
couple things that you really want to focus on: nourishment, nourishing your body. This is a time to flood your brain and body with nutrients. And that looks like a couple of ways: diet, working with me, somebody gets a personalized supplement protocol. Um,
Mhm.
and we want to focus on weight training, because as estrogen changes, we're starting to get muscle loss.
Mhm.
And, it's common for women to feel like they need to do tons and tons of cardio, but without weight training, we start to experience bone density changes. And then that's also what contributes to some of the weight gain, because now we're losing muscle mass. Weight training at least 3 times a week. We want to focus
Heavy
on getting,
weights, or do you recommend, or like even some basic like 2, 4, 5 pounds?
you know, if even if somebody can start with some basics, and really you're looking for some resistance training. So
Mhm. Mhm.
somebody who hasn't been experienced in like doing heavy weight training, get some bands, get some
Yes.
light weights. You can YouTube videos. The main point is just start really building some strength there. So we say nutrition over calorie counting,
Mhm.
nourishment over I've got to be thin. We want to be strong at this point.
Mhm.
What else? We know that community is a big factor here.
Mhm.
When we start to isolate or lose that sense of community, that's when a lot of the cognitive changes start to really present. And so making sure that you're still engaged and keeping up with your people and your family and your
Yeah.
friends, and just that's from more of a holistic approach.
Mm, mm.
Um, so yeah, I also think that there are a lot of environmental factors that play into this. So, there's lots of schools of thought about personal care products and the hormone disruptors that
Mm.
are in the ingredients. And so, if somebody is starting to have these hormone changes, we want to make sure the environment is conducive to them having a really healthy lifestyle. So, looking at like cosmetic and personal care products, there's particular chemicals that really start to disrupt those different cascades in the body. And so, starting to eliminate those can be really impactful as well.
I started reading labels lately, just because I'm going through all these changes, and it
Yeah.
is crazy.
Yes.
Canola oil in like the first, second, third ingredient. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Like I
Yeah.
never really read labels before, but now that I'm focusing more on health, I'm like, wow, there's like a lot of things that
Yeah.
you need to kind of be aware of and just start to make a little bit better choices.
And that's really important for like somebody who's trying to conceive, somebody who's approaching this perimenopause phase. There is an app called Think Dirty,
Mm.
and you can literally scan the barcode of a product, and it will rate the toxins in it. And then you
Wow.
can find alternatives that have a much cleaner ingredient profile. It's
Okay.
it's free. It's super cool. So you can go to Target, and before you buy a product, you could scan the barcode, and it's going to what tell you all about the product and the toxins.
I'm gonna write this down. Think Dirty app.
Think Dirty app. Yep.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned is about keeping up with your community and stuff like that. So, as a woman, I feel like we go to these different chapters. We go through these different chapters in our life. We're in our 20s and then 30s, and then we're having babies, and then they grow up, and then we become empty nesters. So there's like all these changes, right? Like, I feel like as maybe not all, but maybe for some women, they go through a point where maybe they don't feel needed anymore because their identity might have been so tied up as being the wife and the mom and all those things. And then when your kids grow up and then they move out, it's like all these things hit you. It's like, now what am I supposed to do?
That's a really good point, and I think it's something that people don't talk about a lot.
Yeah, because it could
And
be lonely.
yes, and I have seen that markedly change in the context of COVID because we are all working from home, and that
Hmm.
is very isolating. We don't have the community of being at work and going to lunch and those sorts of
Hmm.
things as much anymore. So yeah, community and staying engaged. And one of the questions I ask women during our initial evaluation, and everybody always laughs, is tell me about your hobbies.
Yes. Yeah.
And literally nobody can say, yeah, I love doing XYZ, because that they don't have space for that in their life. But
We.
as they make this transition, like you said, stuff starts to change. Maybe you have more time, really
Mhm.
diving into exploring those hobbies, maybe things that you never got to do because you were so busy taking care of everybody
Totally. Take
else.
a cooking class, a painting class,
Yes.
Pilates,
Yes.
yoga, something.
Yes. I will have patients do homework and like go to their local community college and pick up the adult learning
Yes.
offerings, and they'll be doing all sorts of fun things that they never thought they would have time for, and that is really fulfilling.
Yeah. There's this thing that I do. I do it in my journal. Every Sunday, I write out my plan for the week, and I call it LSN DSN. So learn something new or do something new.
Oh, I
It
love
could
that.
be anything. It could be like cooking a new recipe or attending a class or watching a movie that I've never seen or just learning something new,
Going
and
to a new
doing
coffee
something new.
shop you always wanted to go to.
Yes, totally.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. What are some of the common health issues that women may face as they enter menopause? Just like basic things for them to look for. For me, when I was going through this, the first couple of things that I started to notice in myself was night sweats. I would wake up and it looked like I jumped in a swimming pool. Like I would be, what the heck is going on? The hot flashes, like I would set my AC to like 68 degrees. I'd have the ceiling fans on. I would be sleeping in a pareo. It's kind of like this, like, I don't know, like a big piece of material that I just wrap around. Like I would be so hot. And then my husband is there with a beanie and socks and a sweatpants. And then it was the brain fog. It was all of these things kind of just hitting me within a 12-month span. And it was the weight gain. I was walking 3 miles per day on my treadmill. I was like doing all the things. And for me, that's what I started to gain weight. And it wasn't like muscle weight. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for
I
me,
would
that's
say,
where all the changes like, and then I was like, okay, I need to go and get some
yeah.
help.
Yeah. I would say the most probably five common things is the weight gain. People will complain actually of pain and they think it's joint pain because they're getting older, but it's actually associated with estrogen changes. And so,
Mm.
for instance, once somebody starts getting treated, they'll notice that their aches and pains start to improve, which is game changing in a lot of ways. Sleep changes in the night sweats, like you mentioned, and then overall fatigue and libido loss.
All the things to look forward to. And then to have them say it's going to be about 10 years of this. I was like, no way, man, I am not doing this. How can I possibly do 10 years? But that's what then led me to get on the patch, the estrogen patch,
Yes,
estradiol or whatever it's
estradiol.
called.
Yep, yep.
Estradiol, yeah, and progesterone. I'm on the lowest dose, but it has helped me so much.
Quality of
Even
life
on the
improves.
lowest dose.
Yes,
Yeah, I sleep so
yep,
well, all of that.
yes.
Yeah. Oh,
There's
and magnesium. I do the magnesium tea at night.
Yes. So, and I can give you some thoughts about in terms of like supplementation and protocols like that. Everybody's a little bit different just because each individual has different needs. But there are a couple that across the board people start to feel really good on. And the thing to keep in mind is that if somebody starts supplementing, it doesn't change overnight. We are building up these stores in the body. And so if somebody can be patient after about 3 months of, I would say the most official ones for every woman is a good vitamin D supplement, a probiotic, because as estrogen changes, the pH of the body starts to change.
And
And
that's you can just get that in yogurt, right? Like
you
probiotics
can,
in
yeah.
the
So
okay.
preferably it's coming from natural sources,
Okay.
pickled vegetables,
Okay.
yogurt. I mean, sauerkraut, not everybody loves, but that's a great option. Kimchi's a great option.
Love
Kombucha's a great
kimchi.
option.
Yeah.
So really incorporating those. But a probiotic with lactobacillus can be something that helps sustain the gut environment. And then there's also a ton of research about how it affects mood and anxiety pathways in a positive way.
Yeah.
Um, and then, like you mentioned, the magnesium. Every woman can benefit from magnesium. And there's 8 different types. So magnesium glycinate is the one that I like to use. It's most calming to the central nervous system. It
Mhm.
helps with sleep initiation. It helps with anxiety. Um, and it doesn't have some of the gastrointestinal issues that the other magnesiums have. So you got to be careful with like magnesium citrate.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, those three, if nothing else, if somebody gets consistent with those, can be super helpful.
I know someone who had a miscarriage very, very late in the game. Like she was a week away from her due date. And I just remember all the things that she has gone through and what are some things that she could do for herself? Like there's some ways for women to advocate for themselves.
Yes. So gosh, that is so heartbreaking and challenging. When it comes to certainly late stage miscarriages and miscarriages in general, it's a hard topic to talk about. And I think women feel some shame there. They feel confused, obviously, they feel overwhelmed, and it's not easy to talk about. Absolutely, you can bring that up with your doctor, with your gynecologist. Um, there beyond that though, there are wonderful resources. I'm actually part of something called Postpartum Support International, and this is nationwide, and they have a lot of services online, but you can get support for so many different reasons within the context of miscarriage. You can be a part of grieving groups, you can get individual therapy,
Mm.
and it's free.
Yeah.
So if somebody doesn't feel compelled to reach out to the loved ones who know what's going on, maybe they feel really overwhelmed by that,
Yeah.
they could use these other resources and hear from people who've been through similar experiences. There's obviously going to be a tremendous amount of grieving that happens for that woman, and professional support, getting a therapist, I
Mhm.
think is really really important. And then
Mm.
truly just focusing on basic self care. Are you eating?
Mm.
Are you sleeping?
Mhm.
Are you maybe getting some gentle movement based on if there was trauma associated with the miscarriage?
Mhm.
And giving yourself some grace. But yeah, that's a
Where are
particular.
some places that they can look though? So if they were to just Google, like what would they Google to
Yeah,
look
okay,
for
great
help?
question.
Yeah, just some basic like because I wouldn't even know if I went through that. I wouldn't even what am I even Googling like to look for that type of help
Totally.
in my town?
So I would say somebody can Google a couple things. There's a website called Psychology Today, www.psychologytoday.com, and you can filter by your zip code, by the gender
Nice.
of the provider you want to see, if you're
Okay.
using insurance, and it's going to give you a list of all the people in your area
Okay.
who are either specifically trained in postpartum care and postpartum loss, or just a general therapist. But that's a great resource because then you read through everybody's profile and you can determine if that's somebody that you're going to connect with.
Yeah.
And so that anybody can do that anywhere. And then, as I mentioned, Postpartum Support International.
Okay.
Um, if you Google Postpartum Support International, they actually also have a hotline that's free, so somebody can text in,
Okay.
and they have different kinds of workers who will give you local resources.
This is great to know. I've never even heard of any of these,
Yeah, it's an awesome
but
resource.
this is really good to know.
They're a great organization, and they have just a robust amount of services. So yeah,
Okay. So I like I said, I had that doctor since I was 19 years old, and I had the same doctor. And there was a point where I didn't feel like I was being heard, and I knew in that moment like I needed to change doctors. I just didn't know what to do, where to look, and I ended up finding a doctor on Maui. So I would get on a plane to go see this doctor. I will take a flight. I will rent a car. I go to her office, but I just do it once a year. But I feel like she hears me. She's the one who prescribed these things to me. Like the other doctors were like, it's just going to be about 10 years. If that's how it is, you know. But when is the time? Like, when is a good time for you to think, like, I need to change doctors?
all right. So here's the thing: women are intuitive.
Yes,
You
definitely.
know when something's going on, and you're not crazy, you're not dramatic. Like you know when there's something going on in your body. And so, as
Hmm.
I mentioned earlier, the doctors that are caring for us during pregnancy and who are helping us with contraception in our youth, those are so necessary. But
Hmm.
we aren't traditionally trained in menopause or in that phase of life for a woman. There's very little that's happening in medical school and in our training. And so fortunately now that's starting to change and there are ways to get certified. Looking for a menopause trained provider, or
Hmm.
somebody trained in like hormone therapy and things like that is really important because the research is changing, and somebody who's doing those sorts of treatment are keeping up with all the latest research, the
Hmm.
options out there. And when you're focused on helping women get pregnant, that's not the main
Hmm.
specialty there. So
Hmm.
let them do their job, and then you work on finding somebody who's going to join you in the stage of life and help you navigate that.
Totally. You know what
So
it's like? It's like having a pediatrician. You become an age or a time in your life where, okay, you no longer need the pediatrician. You need this type of doctor.
yeah.
So it's just figuring that out for yourself.
And commonly, the traditional strategy is if somebody's starting to experience those symptoms, it's either get over it, or we can put you back on the pill. That's not always the best idea of that in that stage of life. There's a lot better options out there. So a couple places you can look. There's a Menopause Society. They have a listing of people that are certified to practice this type of treatment. And then I'm part of something called Women's Hormone Network. So that's another database where you can find providers in your area, or even people that are doing telemedicine and things like that. And so that way, you're going to be working with somebody who is there to hear the stuff that you're concerned about, and has some maybe different treatment options than other types of providers at this point.
Mm.
And it sounds like that's maybe what you did. And so you did end up thankfully
Oh,
working with somebody who that's their jam.
yeah. Well, when they said it's going to be about 10 years of this, I was like, bye.
I don't have
I can't do that. I go find somebody else.
no.
But I felt so rushed. I felt so unheard, and I felt so rushed. Like, when I was explaining my problems, they were just like, yep, that's what it is. Yep. They're like, okay, like, see you in a year. And I was like, no, you're not going to see me, guy. I need help. Like, I need someone to hear me. And, and thank goodness, like, for me, thank goodness there's a lot of talk about perimenopause right now out there. So when I started like looking more into it and the things that they were talking about, I was like, I need to find me a doctor who specializes in just this.
And that's the thing. There's, the idea of menopause was shrouded in like, it's this awful time of a woman's life and she's crazy and angry
Right?
and
No.
you don't want to be around her. And I remember growing up thinking like, gosh, this is awful. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just another season that we can approach differently, change some lifestyle stuff, change some nutrition stuff. And a woman can really thrive in that point.
Totally. I look at it like it's the halftime show. I mean, we're not dead. We're not in the fourth quarter overtime. Come on, it's halftime show.
Yes. Yeah. So I would love to empower women to advocate for themselves and ask those questions and even ask if the provider tells you that they can't help you, maybe they have some colleagues who do that kind of treatment. Who can they refer you to?
Or even just asking them, like, is there anyone that you could recommend that specializes in perimenopause and in this stage of my life? And they may have someone. Yeah. All right. Let's talk about a couple of key takeaways from this episode and like give me some takeaways, some basic takeaways that a woman in her 30s and 40s can do, and then a woman perimenopause and over can do.
You can never start too soon. If I could go back and tell myself at 30 years old, things I would say is focus on nutrition over cutting calories, nourishing your brain and body, doing some strength training instead of just trying to run all week long.
Nourishing your brain is big. I think that that's a huge one that I think that maybe when you're in your 30s and 40s, they don't really think about. They're like, well, I'm healthy. My brain is healthy.
Yes. Yes.
My grandmother did crossword puzzles because she would just say, I need to keep my brain active. I'm like, what do you think? She's like, crossword puzzles, just exercising the brain. And English was her second language. And she would just do these. I don't even know if she's putting in the right answers, but she would just do them.
So definitely crossword puzzles, Sudoku.
Yes.
There are different brain game apps now that instead of standing in the grocery store line scrolling through Instagram, you could be building those new neural pathways in your brain. So as you move into these late 30s, early 40s years, you really want to prioritize gut health, getting good healthy fats on board. So we're thinking like avocados, if you tolerate fish or seafood, olive oil, healthy nuts, that is supporting the brain. And then sunshine, that's free.
Yes. Go outside.
Get sunshine if you can, 15 minutes in the morning. That's really helping to support our circadian rhythm.
Even if you take your cup of coffee and just sit out there for 15 minutes in the morning.
Yes.
It's not too hot. The sun isn't like, blazing, but it's like, it's a good, vitamin D.
That's setting your brain up then to help you sleep at night. Sleep is crucial. So, when we don't sleep, we're irritable, we're grumpy, we're hungry. We have all these hunger cues that are inaccurate. So prioritize sleep if you can.
Do you have a sleep routine that you could recommend?
Man, that is a question I get asked all the time. So yeah, but that looks different for everybody. There are some universal things that can be really helpful. So if a woman, we mentioned earlier, the magnesium, 30 minutes before bedtime, that's going to really calm the central nervous system and put somebody in a place where they can ideally fall asleep more quickly. If somebody's experiencing hot flashes, sometimes a little bit of a bedtime snack, in particular bone broth before bed, because it has properties that are going to help with thermoregulation. So
I didn't know that. That's good to know.
Yep. Some bone broth before bed.
I started drinking the, is it Chroma? The brand?
Chroma. Yes.
Yeah, they have the bone broth. It is so delicious. And it's just like in a little pack, like a powder pack, and I just add hot water. It is so good. And you can travel with it.
That's a great tip because I keep those in my work bag. I can never say I'm like without a healthy snack, because those you can take anywhere.
Yeah, even if you're on the plane, you could just ask them for a cup of hot water and you could have that. It's so
Yes,
good.
exactly. So that's like a good tip before bed. Helps with thermoregulation. Plus, your insulin isn't going to spike because you're sleeping and fasting for this period of time while you're in bed. And so you're less likely to have those early morning wakings. Tart cherry juice is known to help increase natural
Okay.
melatonin production. So you do like a quarter cup of tart cherry juice before bedtime.
What about just cherries? If I eat cherries, no?
So
Cherry juice
cherries,
is
yeah, they are one of the only natural foods that helps promote natural melatonin. So you could do cherries for sure,
okay.
like an
Okay.
actual cherry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're in season now, so I've been buying them.
Oh, I bet. I
Yeah.
bet that's wonderful where you are.
Yeah. Well, I get them from Costco. I don't know where they're actually from. They're in season in the Costco area. In the Costco store, they're in season.
That's good. I
Yeah.
think that if somebody's really having sleep struggles, getting sleep hygiene dialed in can be very impactful, but it's hard because that looks like going to bed and waking up at the same time every day,
Mm-hmm.
even on weekends, even, getting consistent so your brain understands that sleep wake cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Even your phone, staying away from your phone or keeping your phone out of the bedroom.
Yep, off your phone, no screens for at least an hour or two before bed.
Yeah.
You can get those glasses that block the blue light. So
Mm-hmm.
I do have clients that will like read, on their Kindle or something. And then I just say, make sure you have those glasses on so it's blocking the blue light, because your brain is seeing that as sunlight.
Mm.
And so that doesn't help. But yeah, limiting exercise. Don't go have a really intense workout right before bed.
Right.
Certainly exercise, because you're going to fatigue your body in an appropriate way, but try to do it in the earlier part of the day before you're going. Yeah.
This is also good. All of this, all these tips.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you for all of your advice and all the wonderful things. I'll be sharing this with my daughters who are in their 30s and 20s, and also for myself, all these tips that you just given. If someone wants to get in touch with you or find you, what's the best way?
I'm most active on Instagram. You can find me at lc.np.
Okay.
Our clinic's Instagram is SoCal Wellness Med Group. And our website is socalwellnessmedgroup.com. Yeah, you can also find me on Psychology Today, that one site that we talked about.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I'll put it all in the show notes. I'm going to put all these things in the show notes. Think Dirty app. I'm going to put all the things
Think
in
Dirty
there.
app. Yep.
Yeah.
And I talk about all those like handy resources on Instagram all the time. I love trying to spread the word and share that. So thank you for sharing this with your audience. And I hope that many women find this helpful.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed our time together, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share this podcast with your friends and family. It helps more than you know, and it allows me to bring even more amazing stories to your ears. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every share inspires another woman on her path to becoming her best self. I'll see you in the next episode.